It is January, and one of my winter favorite things to work on is making new garden beds. So I wanted to show you how I turn just a regular sod yard into garden beds. So what I've done is I've already gone ahead and I've laid in a mulch path up here, and then I threw down about a 1 foot thick layer of leaves. And then here is where I'm going to put a mulch path in between. And then I have about another 3 foot of leaves. Then in early spring, usually about mid-April here, I go ahead and plant potatoes. So what I would do is I would plant my potatoes. I usually plant them about 18 inches apart. And I just reach into the mulch. And by that time, usually the grass is pretty well dead, but in this case it's not because I just covered it. But what I sometimes do is just place a potato right on the grass and then cover it back up with mulch. If you want to go a step further, you could even dig a little hole through the grass into the dirt and set a potato in there, or a half of a potato, a seed potato. And if you have compost, it's nice to even throw down a handful of compost. And then I just cover that potato back up, and I just space them about 18 inches apart, and I kind of stagger the spacings all the way down the bed. And then what happens is those potatoes grow up, and they also shade, which helps protect, from any grass or weeds that might be coming up. And then I harvest those potatoes. I'm thinking it's usually around early August here. And when you dig up the potatoes, you kind of naturally till up that soil a little bit and disturb it, getting the potatoes out, and make a nice seed bed. And then I plant my carrots usually around the end of August. And those are going to be fall harvested. I usually start harvesting my carrots in November, and I harvest sometimes all the way up through the winter and even sometimes in the early spring. But you can actually pull all your carrots in November and store them in Ziploc bags in the refrigerator or in a root cellar if you have one. But this system has worked really well for me. So the spring after, then I will either plant onions here or garlic, or you can just go ahead and start a food forest. Even after the potatoes, you could just leave the mulch on there and go ahead and start planting your berry and nut trees. All right, so I've got my pathways all mulched and the beds are done, and they are set for potatoes in the spring. Just a couple things you might want to consider when making garden beds, depending on where you position them, is first of all access to water. Even though in my area these are heavily mulched, and we actually retain water pretty well through the spring. I have pretty heavy clay soil, so with this, a foot of mulch on top of it, it actually holds water up until about July, which is very close to when I actually start to harvest potatoes. So most of these beds that I've made, I actually don't water until, if I follow the potatoes with some carrots, then I definitely would have to water just to get the carrots to germinate. But other than that, I really don't water them that much. But if you were making these as a permanent garden bed and you wanted to grow especially lettuce, then I would definitely make sure you have access to water. The other thing is, if you have grass all the way around your beds, I would consider putting some kind of border plant around your whole garden. It could be oregano, it could be comfrey. I love comfrey. I plant comfrey anywhere that grass is meeting a garden bed. But you have to really consider comfrey. Comfrey, it sends down a very deep taproot, 12 foot deep. And once it's there, it's very difficult to get rid of. So you just want to think about it, where you put comfrey. But comfrey is a great plant, and I will definitely be doing some more videos about comfrey. But There's a lot of things that you can follow up your potato bed with. Actually, just 2 years ago, all of this was my potato bed all the way up. And now I planted a bunch of trees. There's Jerusalem artichokes, there's gooseberry, raspberry, currants, tons of elderberry. We actually got our first really good harvest of elderberry this year from plants I started just a couple of years ago. And it was phenomenal, probably 8 quarts worth. So yeah, just a couple of years ago, this was all grass, and it's been very productive since. I have another bed that is in this lower area way down here, and that was my potatoes last year, which is now a garden bed. And this fall, I followed up the potatoes with garlic, so that'll be where next year's garlic will be. So this has worked out really well for me, just kind of moving around the yard and making beds, planting potatoes, and then following it up with food forests. One thing I would say is if you have really aggressive grass, like canary reed grass, or you have a bunch of thistle or some kind of tough to manage aggressive plant, it might be a good idea to go ahead and sheet mulch. And that's where you would just put down cardboard, and then you would follow up with a foot of leaf mulch or wood chips, and that should pretty much smother anything. Thanks so much, and if you like this and you want to get more of these videos, then subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thanks so much.